But as for Avatar: The Way of Water, one big thing. James Cameron likes to talk a big game. He has a certain amount of earned hyperbole and earned arrogance. I'm pretty sure when he said the movie had to make $2 billion to break even, he was kind of talking a little shit.
He was kind of joking. I mean,
Yeah.
not joking, but and we'll get to this guy later. The Rock is someone who seems to want to set a very low bar for the success of his movies. James Cameron, he's the king of the world. He wants to set a high bar. That $2 billion number, we all know that he's kind of making Avatar 3 while he's making Avatar 2. And this movie really didn't cost $1 billion or whatever is going out there. So that's our take too, is that the $2 billion number is kind of phony baloney.
If it really is, again, I don't know. This is totally speculation.
Right.
If the movie cost $450 million, the most expensive movie ever made, okay, fine, whatever. And they spent $250 million to market it. Okay, fine, whatever. That's what, $700 million? So you need double that to break even. $1.4 billion. It might get there in a couple weeks, and it's not done yet.
Right.
Do I think the film's going to make $2 billion? Maybe not.
Okay.
It crossed $1 billion worldwide tonight. I'm sorry, whenever this is recording, last night. It took about 2 weeks of global theatrical release. It did it about as quickly as Spider-Man: No Way Home, despite a much smaller overall opening weekend, domestically and worldwide. The weekday numbers have been fucking nuts for this picture.
Yep.
Shocker. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, wait. Because, I mean, the picture delivers on its audio-visual promises. It looks fantastic in IMAX 3D. It looks fantastic in Dolby. It looks great in high frame rate, assuming you like high frame rate. That's a more complicated conversation. And most people who are going to the movies, even if they don't think it's the greatest thing ever made, they're thinking they got their money's worth. And they're telling their friends that they, this is fun. Go see it. Take your kids.
Right.
The other thing that I think we're going to have to look for is this film was almost always going to be leggy by rational standards, at least in terms of Christmas releases. But it might be even leggier than we'd expect. I'm not saying it's going to be as leggy as the first one or Titanic or anything like that, because there's almost nothing coming out in early 2023, especially if you don't like horror movies. All due respect to Megan and M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin, which I'm sure will do very well on their own, respectively. And there's been so much chatter about you need to see this film in IMAX, or you got to see it in 3D, you got to see it in Dolby, that I think there's a larger percentage, even if it's a little bit, a larger percentage of audiences that are waiting until weekend 2, weekend 3, weekend 4, or 4 days after Christmas when everybody's off of school, so they can get the seats they want in the auditorium that they prefer.
Yes, absolutely. We found that to be the case. We found that this is a movie that people are picking their spots. They know it's going to be out for a while. They know it's going to have the PLFs for a while. So they know it's not going to be a case of like Maverick, where Maverick had the IMAXs for 2 weekends maybe, and then it started trickling off. This is going to be a movie you can see in 3D IMAX for a few weeks when the kids are out and they can pick their right in the middle, whatever that is, they're going to do it. Now, Scott, they've been comping this to Rogue One. I see this getting comped to Rogue One a lot. Now, do you think that is a good comp? Or should we only be comping this to Avatar 1? Because, it seems like this is performing the way an Avatar movie performs.
Yes and no. Generally speaking, when you think of leggy Christmas blockbusters that weren't crazy leggy, and by that, Avatar, Titanic, Jumanji, The Force Awakens, which is still one of the most leggiest movies ever to open above $100 million. It made $248 in opening weekend and legged out to almost 4 times that number by the end. That's nuts even by Christmas standards. Aquaman made $335 from a $72 million opening weekend. That was the leggiest live action big deal superhero movie since Tim Burton's Batman in 1989.
Wow.
Whoa. So yeah, I mean, it's. But in terms of regular Christmas legs for big movies, The Hobbit 2, I'm excluding The Hobbit 3 because it opened on a Wednesday. Rogue One, Tron Legacy. Those are films that made over under 3.5 to 3.9 times their respective 3-day opening weekends. And if we play in that sandbox, then Avatar: The Way of Water will make about double what its 11-day total is. So right now it's at what, 295. So over under 575 seems to be the basement.
Right. So
now,
then at that point,
sort of 800. No, I don't know.
Right.
But,
so at that point, it seems like this will, because Rogue One made 530 million domestic total. It's going to end up higher than Rogue One, but maybe not in a completely different league.
Yes.
Not in that 700 domestic.
Yes.
I mean, let's talk about the high end. Do we feel that high end is still on the board, where Avatar 2: Way of Water is a top 10 domestic of all time? It's bumping up against Maverick and the original Avatar and Black Panther. Can it get to that level? What is the path where that happens?
Will it? I don't know. Can it? Absolutely.
Okay.
Because again, not to be a cliche, but don't bet against James Cameron. I'll be very interested to see what the next 3 days of weekday grosses are like. And again, even after everybody goes back to school and business as usual, there just aren't a lot of movies opening in early 2023.
Right.
And that's, again, all due respect to the horror films that, Megan could absolutely overperform.
Right.
I've seen it. It's a lot of fun. It gives you what you want from the previews. It's the kind of movie that, yes, I wish it had been an R, because there are times where it feels like it's holding back, but my 11-year-old had a blast.
Right.
And
Megan could be the Black Phone, Knock at the Cabin could be old.
Yeah.
And Cocaine Bear will probably be snakes on a plane, but it could be,
which by 2023 standards would be great for an original non-franchise, whatever, R-rated picture like that.
Absolutely.
I say that with all due respect.
Yeah.
But we don't have, unless I'm forgetting something, we don't have a Bad Boys for Life or a Sonic the Hedgehog level movie opening in January, February. So Avatar: Way of Water,
eventually mid-February, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Right. Okay.
And
so
that's
that basically
when things kick off.
So we've got 6 weeks about where Avatar: Way of Water, barring a Cocaine Bear or Knock on the Cabin, really has theaters to itself. And probably another week or 2 weeks almost where you're going to have a lot of people home from work, a lot of college kids home from school with nothing to do. So it really has almost 2 weeks where the weekday grosses could be absurdly high.
Yes, and that's where the magic is made. It's Christmas legs are unlike any other spot in the calendar. I remember growing up, and this is probably before your time, but a movie like Mouse Hunt which opened the same day as Titanic, by the way. Titanic, Tomorrow Never Dies, and Mouse Hunt. That movie made 10 times its $6 million Friday to Sunday gross. Sabrina, which in 1995 was a remake with Julia Ormond and Harrison Ford. It under opened with about $5 million and legged it to 52.
Wow. It's just a great time to be a movie theater. It's not a great time to be every movie, as we'll get to, but it's definitely a great time.
You gotta open. If you can open, then
right.
Hope.
And do you think that this movie, because I think the thing that we're hearing a lot of is, like all the Cameron movies, there's always and I don't want to say haters. It's it's a term that's beneath all of us, but there's definitely an audience always rooting against his stuff. And I think, especially today, there's an audience that roots only for superhero movies, and anything that's not is something to root against. And I think that camp is setting up the absurd success of Avatar 1 as the success line, which is just it's such a straw man. You can't have the greatest thing of all time and expect to have it happen again. This movie is not going to make $2.9 billion.
I wrote a lot of posts in late summer, early fall 2015, right up until the release of The Force Awakens, saying that while it probably would make a gajillion dollars, here are some reasons why it might only make most of the money. As I like to say, instead of all the money. And obviously it did turn out to make all the money, but I still had people on my social media feed swearing it was a flop because it didn't crack 3 billion. So, and this is an ongoing problem with people who don't have any clue what the hell they're talking about trying to lead the discourse.